Amigo. All right, so now that was my first read through. I stumbled on one sentence, so when I did, that became some of the editorial. It was not my intention to do that. My intention is to just read it through, no editorial, and then secondly, provide editorial. It is my opinion as a blogger, as an amateur writer, to leave the writing in the hands of one person. So if you embellish the idea of writing and consider it an art, then that feedback should come through spoken words, leaving the artist to then write it. So if you consider writing an art, which is a stretch, arguably true, but not true, and if you consider it an art and you imagine a painter saying, "What do you think of my painting?" and all of a sudden the person who was asked picks up a brush and says, "You need more blue here," no one would ever do that. So in part, my editorial about the process of writing comes out in this at the beginning. So anyways, that's why I'm giving this feedback in spoken word rather than, my own words. Because my own words, if I were to rewrite paragraphs, then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you're cutting and pasting, and now you've got mismatched paragraphs. And even though you think they flow together when you publish it, they were not written by one person, and they should be. If you want the document to be cohesive, one person should write it from beginning to end. And in the event of a professional setting like this, where you got multiple people that have to approve it, I think once the final form is put together, it should be rewritten from scratch a second time. That's moving on. Now, more specific editorial about the text. Please, if you ignore everything I say, please attempt to not ignore this. Global is not mentioned, and global is FR's biggest asset, biggest claim of legitimacy, and it needs to be used to sell the system. The industry has a history of taking other people's money that they don't earn. That shouldn't be mentioned. However, more strict controls on the banking has, I'm going to say, solved that problem. Not that there aren't people getting ripped off, but it has reduced it to a level that the industry is considered, by my opinion, and I think El Jefe's, relatively clean. So what can be said about the bank? A few of the things that I catch myself saying is, you're hearing how this, now I'm speaking as if I'm speaking to a client. You're hearing how this program is set up, and you can imagine that you pay to financial rescuers, and then FR pays to the creditors. So that is not the best way to think about how it works. If you think of, in the center of this business model, you have a circle, and that circle belongs to the bank. Now, client pays to the bank pays the fees that are owed to FR. Bank pays to the collectors, and then bank pays itself its monthly fee of, and I wouldn't say the number, but a modest number in the single digits. You might say something like that. But try to stay away from numbers whenever possible. Reduce the use of numbers. That is a better description of what happens. And another way I say it is nobody handles anyone else's money except the bank. Client pays to a bank account in his or her or their own name, and then the bank distributes money to who is entitled to receive that money. Money is not distributed to anyone, and the bank is audited, it is regulated, and it audits FR. It is the biggest claim to the company's legitimacy. Moving on. So that is the, so if you ignore or decline everything I say, please don't decline that. And then the second most significant thing is bundle the negatives together. You got the negatives sprinkled through this document. Put them in one section, list them. That is my advice. You got taxes talked about in one area, and by the way, you use severe hardship at one point and legitimate hardship in the other point. I think that adjectives to clarify. Hardship should be dropped. I think it should just be financial hardship. So whatever it is, bundle the negatives together. I think excessive text on what is an unsecured debt, it's almost as if you're trying to teach someone how to do this work. You simply, and you even got land in there. Nobody owns land that's in debt, and you know that's not true. You've got hundreds of files, and you know some clients do, but it doesn't belong in this document. It's houses and cars. Basically, we settle all debt except houses and cars and some student loans. Should be the only disclaimers of what you don't do. So again, if you read it, there's too much text given to what you don't do. You describe secured debt, which you don't do in too much detail. The deal about taxes, the $600, definitely delete $600. You have people read this. I know this firsthand. People read numbers with different comprehension than they read words. And they'll read through this thing and they'll turn to their husband, or a husband will turn to his wife and say, it's going to be $600 a month. And if you look at the context of $600, it has nothing to do with what their payment is. Nothing can be known about what they're going to pay other than it's going to be in excess of $200 a month until you open their file. Other advice, stay away from jargon. Use pull credit. Pull credit is something professionals say to one another. We review your credit. We review the client's credit report. And then just the voice of the text, I think, flips back and forth, but I can't articulate it specifically. Sometimes I use a very awkward phrase, dear kind readers, because I force myself to know I am now addressing my readers because I'm asking them to do something. I'm telling them there's something I don't want them to miss. And then I say, sincerely, Tom Duty, and I flip back. So that is a very awkward obsession I have. I've seen nobody else adopt that technique, and so I'm in no way advocating it. It's certainly not becoming popular, but the spirit of what I do, in this text I address this person, and in this text I'm just writing as if I'm writing a blog. This text, as I read it, has a little bit of both. The double parentheses around the S behind the word hardship or hardships, I think it can be dropped. Again, full legal coverage to any creditors. You're talking about that as an asset, but the whole idea that they might get sued is really a risk. It should be bundled with the risks. You can talk about the solution to that risk among the risks, but again, don't sprinkle it out. And just beware that internet reading and financial rescuers, debt solution. Why do we do it? That sentence, why do we do it? I wouldn't use it. Why do we educate? I think is what you're meaning to say. I'm going to keep this under 10 minutes. Make one simple payment, one simple monthly payment. The simple part about it is it's a ACH, and you might say one. I think kind of everyone knows what ACH is now. 5 years ago, it was not true. Where I'm saying don't use jargon, I kind of think we all have permission to use ACH. So make one monthly ACH payment from your own account to the bank account established for the client at the company's bank. Savings of thousands of dollars. Savings is something I try to stay away from. I use phrases like, people will pay their debt in a couple of years instead of a couple of decades. Very vague. They're not going to hold you to it. But the idea of saving money and dodging this dark storm cloud of financial mess. Oh, I'm going to save money. It's like getting a cancerous tumor removed and the doctor claiming you're going to lose weight because it's a 5-pound tumor. Fortunately, it didn't kill you. And by the way, you're going